This is Distant Replay, the podcast that goes back in time to relive all the greatest events that we witnessed in sports. From upsets, to championships, to cultural moments, we discuss it all. Coming up on today's episode.
Just about 30 meters left for Lezak to give Phelps the greatest single performance in Olympic Games history. Lezak trying to hold off Amon Sullivan above him. Lezak is going to break the world record. Trying to stay ahead of Sullivan. And Lezak, the hero in the 400 free relay, won't let Phelps down at all. History in Beijing for Michael Phelps.
Going back to August 17th, 2008 for the men's 4x100 meter medley relay. This was Michael Phelps' 8th gold medal of the Beijing Olympics. And we figured we're getting close, Mike, to the Olympics starting back again. So we're doing a little bit of Olympic content leading up to the event. And when I picked the race, I was like, we got to do some Phelps stuff. But I was thinking when I picked this one that this was the very close, tight fingertip finish. But it wasn't. But it was still great to go back to this one.
Yeah, this is probably the most historic one because what was at stake. But you're right, that one where he barely fingertipped the guy at the end, that one might have been a better race, but this one was an iconic sports moment from an historical perspective.
It was. That's all we do. We're doing this one tonight for our event. It's going to be a little bit shorter than we're used to. We usually do, longer games. This is an event that took a little under 4 minutes, and we got a little bit of NBC's coverage. We're going to go through that as well. The Summer of Dan Hicks. Mike, I know you're excited to talk Summer of Dan Hicks.
Yeah, Summer of Dan Hicks Part 2 here.
Just a few weeks ago, we were doing the U.S. Open at Torrey Pines coverage. That was the start of Dan Hicks' summer, and it continues in Beijing. But remember, you can find this race. We're going to put it up online, distantreplaypodcast.com. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram, but also on YouTube. Please subscribe to YouTube and hit that like button. Leave us a comment. Let us know if there's an event you want us to go watch or a true crime episode or a documentary to recap. We do each of those every single week. So going back to Beijing, Mike, this was, again, August 17th, 2008. Michael Phelps had already won 7 gold medals. This was the talk going into this one, right? We knew what to expect. He had a very good Olympics prior to this. Even going back to, I think, 2004, he had success, right? So he's been in the game for a while. This is kind of his peak. Like, he had been building. He had some really good Olympics. 2004, he won 6 gold medals to go along with 2 bronze. So he'd won 8 medals, and he was still kind of in that same boat. Like, can he get over the hump and win 8? That's the question. He's going to compete in 8 events. Can he get to 8? And do you remember going back to that era? Like, he's one of the greatest Olympians, I know, of our lifetime, but probably American Olympians ever, easily.
As far as storylines go in Summer Olympics, other than like the Dream Team phenomenon, which really wasn't that great in terms of competition, this Michael Phelps swimming era for the Summer Olympics is the number one storyline I could remember. I mean, I don't think there's even a close second. Do you?
No, and it's interesting you mentioned that. Like, I think about it now, and you kind of present it like that in terms of Dream Team was kind of a huge story going into it. Because most of the Olympic coverage is probably like you go into excited to see 1 or 2 events, right, or 1 or 2 athletes competing in an event. You don't think about it as like catching an athlete or a team over a course of the entire Olympics, which, is not totally the case with Phelps. It was a shortened time period, but you knew like almost every other night or every few nights you got to tune in to watch him compete. Kind of like the Dream Team, right? Every few nights or 4 or 5 nights, you got to see them compete. Whereas, normally it's like a 1-off or 2-off. Or you might see a swimmer race in 3 events. But yeah, I mean, it was like that was the story. It was like, is he competing tonight? When's his next race? When's his next attempt at a gold medal?
Yeah, if you're NBC, this is like a gold mine because not only do you have the 7 or 8, gold medal races he's in, but you have all the preliminaries, to qualify for the gold medal event. All the I don't know what they call them, the qualification heats or whatever those are.
Yeah.
You have all those. Then you have the actual final race where the medals are decided. And look, the thing then was Mark Spitz's record. Even if you just casually follow the Olympics, you knew Mark Spitz 7 gold medals.
Right.
They would always show the old footage of Mark Spitz winning his 7 gold medals, and you knew that was the bar that Phelps was going to be compared to. Like, I think at this point we kind of already knew, all right, he's going to be like a top 1, 2, or 3 U.S. Olympian of all time, right? That wasn't really in doubt. but could he reach the absolute pinnacle was really the only question coming into these games.
That was the story. And, along those kind of same lines, not only single Olympics, but, total Olympics, by his third race, he's competing in 8. His third race, he won gold in the 200-meter butterfly, which was his dominant event. So good watching him. We saw it again in this race. But, with that one, he won his 9th gold medal of his career, which at that time was good enough to match Mark Spitz and Carl Lewis and a couple other athletes in modern history to win 9 gold medals. So, he was already kind of making history before we even got into the middle of this entire run. So that's to kind of give you a sense of where he is. And, I mean, you look at the races he was competed in early on, Mike. Only the 100-meter butterfly, which was the second race of the Olympics in 2008, he set the Olympic record, 50.58 seconds. Every other event leading up to this final one, the 4x100-meter medley, he set a world record on top of the gold medal.
That's incredible. I didn't realize that stat. It's a great little nugget there. And this is an event now, this 4x100 medley relay. Like, I remember where I was watching it, vividly. I remember where I was watching it. It was sometimes it's hard to put that into context when we do these podcasts, but this was something everyone was watching. Even Kobe Bryant and the United States men's basketball team who are in the stands for this event. So this is a international United States, wherever you are, if you like watching the Olympics, you're glued to this event.
Yeah, whenever he competed, like anybody that could get tickets to watch him was there. And we had that mentioned during this coverage about Kobe and the American team being there. But the other interesting aspect of this too, Mike, that kind of added to the lore and the importance and how much coverage you got, this was the first Olympics with social media. Because you go back to 2004, 04 didn't really have any social media, right? This was like a year or two before the iPhone was even introduced. But by 08, in just those 4 years, I think Facebook had come around and been pretty popular. I think Twitter was up and running, and it wasn't what it is today, but it was still a number of people on there. So you had that other element of people talking about this as it's happening.
Talking about while it's happening, ironic that the first games with a lot of social media involved were in China. But look, you have the people on social media. You have 17,000 people at the venue, people standing in aisles. Now, this is 17,000. That's like what Madison Square Garden holds. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you want to put it in perspective, like that's not like a small play. I'm surprised it even holds that many.
It didn't look that big.
But I just think people were jam-packed in there was more the case. And, this is a race that the United States had never lost before, this 4x100 medley relay, like ever. They won it all 11 times they participated in it. And, Ben, it might be worth reminding people what the 4x100 medley relay is.
Yeah. It's all 4 strokes, right? So
all 4 strokes, so it's a relay.
Yep.
4x100, so 100 is 50, 50, the pool's 50 meters, so it's down and back.
Yep.
And each participant of the 4 does a different stroke. And it goes in order. It goes back, backstroke, breaststroke, butterfly, freestyle. And in this race, Phelps would be the third leg for the American team doing the butterfly, which was his specialty, like Ben mentioned.
Exactly. Yep, that's the case indeed. And the biggest competition in this race was Australia, and they always kind of historically are that other country that really is really good at swimming, has had some very, very incredible swimmers that have competed in Olympics, but they were the team that they thought maybe had a chance to, if any of them did, to maybe knock off the U.S. It was this competition and this team, and they had a good shot at it. But before we get into this thing, let's talk a little bit of coverage. We had NBC, we had Dan Hicks, and I mean Dan Hicks is everywhere in 2008, and I don't think there was we talk about the summer of Dan Hicks, but his schedule to be able to go from Tiger to this Olympics where this event happens and this athlete's competing and making history. I mean, just those 2 events alone are enough to fill out a career, right? But this guy was just doing this in a matter of just a couple of months.
Yeah, I know we joked around during the Tiger Woods episode, but dude, these are ball-breaking events to cover too.
Yeah.
He's doing golf, and then he's doing these Olympic swimming events. He's got to remember all these swimmers' names. He's got to presumably study swimming to learn the histories of all these guys and all these countries and everything like that. And he just does a great job with it. Rowdy Gaines does too, who's the analyst here. Mm-hmm. And these 2 are the 2 voices I equate with swimming at the Olympics. It's gotten to that point for me. It's nice hearing them every 4 years. You're like, oh yeah, Dan Hicks and Rowdy Gaines, awesome. Hopefully they're doing it this year. I don't really keep up on Olympic announcing schedules, but Dan Hicks, you can't say enough, man. This is if there's such thing as vintage Dan Hicks, this is it.
This is it, and it was a lot of fun watching this. And also to kind of keep in mind too, I think the race that I was thinking about, Mike, was the 4x100 freestyle.
Yeah, who's the guy that almost beat him? He was like a Eastern European name.
I don't remember that one. I don't remember that specifically, but I just remember the relay that I was thinking about when I threw this out there to you was that 4x100 freestyle. That's the one, and Dan Hicks was on the call for that. That was race 6 of the 8 for him, and one that was on the verge of kind of throwing everything off. But that's the one where Lezak comes back and wins it at the very end.
Yeah, and that's what I mentioned here, that Lezak again is in the anchor position at the end with the freestyle here. They didn't talk about that event that much at all, I don't think.
That's what I was kind of surprised about. And again, we didn't get a ton of coverage. I'm sure like studio coverage and everything leading up to it probably talked about that quite a bit. They had a ton of coverage NBC that night, I'm sure. But yeah, once they got into the event and introduced like all the swimmers in each relay team, like they didn't mention that. I thought like we would have heard a little bit about, hey, the U.S. trying to close this out after a remarkable relay just a few nights ago, whatever it was. You would thought you had mentioned that, but it was all about this race.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, you're right. They did make it about this historic race. Because I remember that other race. I remember Dan Hicks' call being like a legendary call.
Yeah.
And very kind of emotional and in the moment with that call. But here we are. Phelps has history right at his fingertips, and it's not. They always showed his mom in the stands, which I always thought was good. She looked like a regular mom.
Yeah.
I always thought that was cool. Like she didn't. I don't know. I always thought when they showed her his mom in the stands, it was so genuine. And you could see how nervous she was, and it was just it was pretty cool.
Yeah. This team made up of Aaron Pearsall went first, Brendan Hansen went second, then Phelps and Lezak. I think the biggest question marks were the first two, both very good swimmers, right? They'd already set world records as a very dominant team. But if there was maybe a little bit of weakness, it was at the beginning of this race for this U.S. team. And Mike, it got off, it was a pretty close race throughout. But I think those first two legs, Pearsall gave the U.S. the lead after the first leg. Then Hansen kind of got caught a little bit, but the Japanese swimmers actually had the lead after 2 of those legs, surprisingly. Australia was right there with the U.S. That third leg in Phelps, if there was kind of a race to kind of capture his greatness, even among this team that's so dominant, he's the guy that stands out. And you saw with that butterfly stroke of his where he just is unlike anybody you've seen with that, trying to pull that feet off and with that stroke. He kind of gives him that lead that is too much to overcome by Australia. And it was incredible watching how dominant he was again.
Yeah, that last probably 25 meters on the way back there is like, you may not know what you're watching when you're watching swimming, but if you watch that, if you're just a sports fan, you can tell like, wow, I'm watching something pretty special because you could literally see him like a button flip, you know what I mean? And him just take things into his own hands and increase that lead for Lezak. It was too much of a lead for that guy. They kept on talking about that guy Sullivan.
Right.
For Australia, but that was too much of a lead for him to overcome. You could kind of tell based on how much in front Phelps was that, Lezak was going to be able to hold on. And look, they cruised to victory. But the story here was Phelps's leg of the race, and of course Phelps getting the 8 gold medals and surpassing Mark Spitz. And the United States team set another world record in this race as well. So just dominant all the way around.
Yep, 3:29.34. Australia was 0.7 of a second behind. Japan finished third for the bronze. It was just a great race all around. I was, again, a little disappointed I wasn't watching that freestyle. I got them mixed up, and I'm going back, 13 years now to that event. I was thinking it was the last one that finished in that dramatic fashion, but just a few races before that. But this is still an incredible feat, and it's hard to believe it's already been 13 years since this happened, Mike.
I know. I was watching this at an outside bar in Milford, Connecticut during the summer. Last time I've been to an outside bar. It was at night.
Yeah, but it was in China. Wasn't it like an odd time?
Maybe it was. Is that the time where they're still tape delaying or showing the?
No, they were showing it live. I think it might have been where it was just the morning over there and night. I don't remember what it was, but
maybe it was like, I think they're 12. Aren't they 12 hours difference? Maybe it was like,
10
or 11 p.m. here and 10 or 11 a.m. there or something.
Yeah, I think it's like 18 hours.
Okay.
But I don't know. I think maybe it might have been like a midday or early afternoon event that ended up.
Yeah,
being
that would
like
make sense if
nighttime
it's 9-10 o'clock here.
Yeah.
It's 3 p.m.
Either
there.
way, I
That
think
would
we
make
were all tuned into that and,
Oh, yeah.
and knew we were watching history and wanted to see it and pulling pretty hard for him. And it's pretty awesome to see. But Michael Phelps, would finish his career, the greatest swimmer of all time. And this year we're paying attention to Katie Ledecky again on the female side. She's been dominant, and she has some races where it's just not even fun. It's not even fair to watch how far ahead she gets. So we'll be keeping an eye on that this summer. We have another Olympic race coming up next week. We'll get into Michael Johnson. We'll take you back to 96. Plus, we got some Olympic coverage on the documentary side as well. So still plenty to come as we get ready for these Olympics over in Tokyo.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll be into the Olympics. I don't know if our audience, Ben. I don't know how much they're into the Olympics. I guess we're gonna find out.
Hey, Mike, let's give our audience credit. We've got a pretty niche audience. Like
I don't know.
The Tour de
Who knows?
France got a lot more coverage than we thought it would.
Yeah, you're right. So maybe these Olympic episodes will be a big hit. But let us know what you think of the episodes as always. Likes, subscribes, ratings mean a lot on all the different platforms. And we'll catch you guys next week.
Yep, make sure you hit subscribe. As Mike said, we're going to put this race up on our website, distantreplaypodcast.com. We'll talk to you again soon.